Hey, welcome to The Explainer. So think about this. What if we could actually cure crime? I don't mean just punishing it. I mean treating it, almost like a disease, by going right to the source, a person's own biology. Today, we're diving into the policies that have tried to do exactly that, by changing the human body to change human behavior. And that's really the big question here, isn't it? Can we treat criminal tendencies like some kind of medical condition? The idea that we can has led to some of the most fascinating and, frankly, controversial policies in our justice system, from prescribing drugs to, well, prescribing death. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack this whole idea of using biology as policy. Then, we'll get into three really specific examples: biochemical and dietary treatments, the very troubling history of eugenics, and the biological argument behind the death penalty. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by asking, do these things even work? And are they ethical? So, the basic idea that drives all of this is a pretty huge shift in thinking. It asks, what if crime isn't just a bad choice? What if it's a biological condition? And if that's true, then maybe the solution isn't just punishment. Maybe it's a cure, a direct intervention into someone's brain or body chemistry. Okay, so how on earth do you even try to cure crime by changing someone's chemistry? Well, this first approach is all about policies designed to alter a person's internal biology, hoping to change their external behavior. Let's look at a few real-world examples. Here we go, a perfect example of a direct biological intervention. We all know that alcohol abuse can fuel aggression and crime, so the drug antabuse tackles this problem head-on. It's prescribed to treat alcoholism, and it works by blocking the body's ability to process alcohol. The result? If you drink even a little bit, you get hit with these immediate, absolutely awful hangover symptoms. It's basically a powerful chemical deterrent that's built right into your body. And antabuse is really just the tip of the iceberg. For male sex offenders, there's a drug called stilbestrol. It's a female hormone that's been used to suppress testosterone. You might have heard it called chemical castration. But, not all interventions are quite that drastic. On the dietary side, some research has linked low serotonin levels to violence, which suggests that simple things, like a diet with more tuna, could actually have an effect. In fact, a study back in 2002 found that just giving young male prisoners vitamin supplements led to a real, measurable drop in disciplinary problems. But the million-dollar question is, do these methods actually work? Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, we see some real successes, especially with those diet and vitamin studies in prisons. But on the other hand, there are some serious drawbacks. Drugs like stilbestrol can cause pretty severe side effects, like breast development in men, which obviously raises huge ethical questions. And maybe most importantly, these things are not magic bullets. They just don't work for everybody, and they often don't account for just how different and complex we all are. Okay, so now we need to talk about what happens when these ideas about biology and crime get taken to their most extreme and their most dangerous conclusion. Let's talk about the theory of eugenics. So the core belief of eugenics is this idea of a criminal gene. Its supporters argued that if crime is hereditary, well, then the only way to fix society is to stop criminals from having kids, usually through forced sterilization. This is the ultimate example of something called biological determinism, this really dangerous idea that your destiny is just locked into your genes, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And believe me, this was not just some fringe theory that stayed in books. It had absolutely horrific real-world consequences. In Nazi Germany, the state's belief in purifying the population led to this staggering number. An estimated 400,000 people were forcibly sterilized because they were labeled unfit, and that category included criminals. This policy later escalated into the mass murder of 70,000 people under the regime's so-called euthanasia program. The verdict on eugenics today? It is absolute and unequivocal. It's condemned as incredibly unethical, a massive violation of basic human rights. And, just as importantly, it's built on a foundation of completely flawed, unreliable, and biased science. It's junk science, plain and simple. All right, that brings us to our final policy, the death penalty. Now, we usually debate this on moral or legal grounds, right? But there's also a very specific biological argument that has been used to justify it. This might be the ultimate application of that biological determinism we were just talking about. The logic is chillingly simple. If a person's criminality is a fixed, unchangeable part of their biology and they can't be rehabilitated, then the only way to permanently protect society from them is to eliminate them. But does this ultimate punishment actually work? Does it deter others? Well, the data tells a really surprising story. Looking at the US, murder rates are consistently lower in states that don't have the death penalty compared to the states that do. This evidence directly challenges that core argument that the threat of execution actually stops other people from committing similar crimes. So, when we actually weigh its effectiveness, the only certain benefit is that it stops one specific person from ever committing another crime. On the flip side, the evidence shows it doesn't really work as a general deterrent, especially for those impulsive, heat-of-the-moment crimes. And, of course, towering over this whole debate is the irreversible, terrifying risk of executing an innocent person. So, after exploring these three very different biological approaches to dealing with crime, what's the final verdict? How effective are they? And what place, if any, should they have in our justice system? So let's just recap real quick. Biochemical and dietary treatments, they show some promise for sure, but they come with really complicated ethical problems, and they are far from being a cure-all. Eugenics, a total moral and scientific failure, a terrifying cautionary tale of ideology disguised as science. And the death penalty, at least when it's argued from a biological standpoint, fails as a deterrent and carries that ultimate irreversible risk. And this all leaves us with a really critical question for our future. As our understanding of genetics, of the brain, gets more and more sophisticated, these dilemmas are only going to get more complex. So, where do we draw the line between a just punishment and a forced medical treatment? Honestly, that's a question we are all going to have to answer.